and because of the improper instructions to lie about the affair and the fraudulent financial transactions that ensued. Eventually, my depression was so severe that I became suicidal, and was involuntarily committed to a mental institution. On November 18, 2010, my attorney delivered to Daystar lawyer John Lynch a letter stating that he was representing me, as well as 2 other former employees. A few weeks later, on November 30th at 11 a.m., Daystar broadcast a new episode of Celebration in which Marcus admitted that he had been unfaithful to his wife.
All right, let me take you through a story that's both shocking and thought-provoking. It's about Jeanette, a former employee at Daystar, who filed a legal complaint that pulled back the curtain on what really happens behind the scenes at some big ministries. This story dives into how some employees stumbled upon emails that exposed Marcus Lamb, the head of Daystar, and the ripple effects that followed. What's wild is that instead of addressing the issue with transparency and humility, the response seemed more like damage control on steroids, crisis management designed to protect reputations and keep the donor dollars rolling in. And then there's the allegation that these donor funds, given in faith and trust, were being used for personal expenses. It's a lot to take in, right? This isn't just about one person or one organization. It's a window into how the misuse of power and resources can erode trust in ministries. It's the kind of story that forces us to reflect on integrity, accountability, and the responsibility that comes with leadership, especially in a spiritual context. And you know what? The Bible has a lot to say about situations like this, about hypocrisy, stewardship, and the danger of living one way in private and another in public. Let's unpack this story and see what lessons we can learn, not just for leaders, but for all of us as believers. Listen to her submission.
I started working as the director of marketing at Daystar in June 2005. In the process of applying for the job, I was interviewed by Marcus Lamb and Janice Smith. She was identified as the vice president of programming and sales for Daystar, and the individual to whom I would report if I became director of marketing. Before accepting employment, it was very important to me, as a Christian, to determine the moral integrity of the organization, and especially the individuals under whose authority I would work. In an employment brochure, Daystar itself encouraged job applicants to do exactly that. They quoted 1 Thessalonians 5 verse 12, which says, "We beseech you, brethren, to know them which labor among you, and are over you in the Lord." Accordingly, I asked both Marcus and Janice about the moral standards with which Daystar was managed, and the moral climate of the workplace. They both replied and represented to me that Daystar was operated in conformity to the highest standards of Christian behavior. They made specific reference to chastity, modesty, and purity, and said that conformity to those standards was required. But when Marcus and Janice made these representations, they were themselves secretly in the midst of an illicit sexual affair, and, at that point, it had been ongoing for approximately 5 years. After Daystar offered me the position of marketing director, and in reliance upon the false representations by Marcus and Janice, I accepted the employment and began working. I reported directly to Janice and indirectly to Marcus. Thereafter, Marcus himself continued to make representations about his company, and about his marriage to Joni, that were false, in light of his ongoing affair with Janice. I was an excellent employee of Daystar, performing my duties with skill and professionalism, and they repeatedly acknowledged these facts. In August 2007, an employee who reported to me, advised me and the information systems manager, that he had found emails clearly proving that Marcus and Janice were having an illicit sexual relationship and that it had been going on for about 7 years. In addition to many lewd statements, Marcus wrote in one of his emails to Janice that he could not wait to make her the next Mrs. Marcus Lamb. The emails also revealed that financial resources of Daystar had been used to facilitate trysts in other locations. One employee provided copies of the emails to me and to another employee. He then promptly tendered a 2-week notice of his resignation. The revelation of the ongoing and long-standing affair between 2 senior officers of Daystar, and indeed the 2 people who had interviewed me and to whom I reported, was utterly devastating. illicit sexual relationship between Marcus and Janice obviously violated the published statement of core values of Daystar. I and another employee did not know what we should do, so we consulted Fred and Anna Kendall. They were experienced marriage counselors who had often appeared on Celebration. The Kendalls advised us that Marcus should step down from his
Before we go on, let's pause and hear how others have reacted to this story. Joni Lamb and Daystar need to be shut down. Investigations need to be done. Truth is not gossip. Sin should be judged. I believe it goes much deeper than people know. Oh, what a web of lies Daystar has weaved when they've deceived. They need to shut down their operation. A 7-year affair is not a mistake, as some would like to paint it. Thank you for telling your story of the truth. I'm so sorry this happened to you. Marcus Lamb stood and begged for money, knowing full well that he was using that money to support his affair. Stop supporting Daystar. So sorry you had to go through that, especially having a breakdown. The injustice done to you will be dealt with. All will come to light. This was a good recap from Jeanette Hawkins. She was a lovely person, and boy did Marcus and Janice mislead her. Who knew they were in the process of a 7-year affair? The truth revealed in small intervals is not gossip. It's what is done in the darkness will be brought forth into the light. Watch Laura Lynn Thompson. She is following this Daystar scandal. Sound the alarm. Daystar is a Pandora box. What is happening today in Daystar points to a rotten foundation that prevailed already under Marcus Lamb. When Marcus passed away, Daystar's nakedness was simply uncovered. Keep in mind that SA took place under Marcus Lamb, and he instructed everyone to hush over the issue. How you are fallen from heaven, O Daystar, son of dawn. How you are cut down to the ground, you who laid the nations low. Isaiah 14:12, ESV, just sad. Sounds like a viper's nest. It was very disgusting and disappointing of Daystar. So according to this audio, the Celebration episode that aired when Marcus and Joni admitted publicly about Marcus's affair was the same day, November 30th, years later that he passed away. Let's dive back into Jeanette's story.
Leadership position, and that he and Joni should seek marriage counseling. But they refused to confront Marcus themselves. They left to us the decision as to exactly how to present the information to company management. We decided to explain the situation to Bill Trammell, because he was Joni's father and a manager at Daystar. After we provided Bill a copy of the emails, he thanked us and told us that he would send them to Joni. Almost immediately thereafter, she called me and thanked me for bringing the affair to light. But this may have been misleading, as the emails contain information suggesting that she already knew about her husband's affair. After we spoke with Bill, Joni insisted that Janice leave Daystar immediately. Daystar hastily agreed to purchase her home and entered into a sham consulting agreement under which Daystar paid her substantial sums of hush money. Thereafter she moved out of state, and did not render to Daystar services of equivalent value to those substantial sums she was paid. Daystar then actively deceived people, both within and outside the organization, about the reason for her departure. Janice had been in a high-profile position and had appeared frequently on Celebration, but suddenly she was gone. Many people asked what had happened. Daystar, and Joni in particular, directed me to participate in the cover-up and deception concerning Janice's departure. This, coupled with the flagrant breach of trust already described, was intolerable to me, so I resigned. My last day at Daystar was on May 31, 2008. Both before and after I left, I experienced severe emotional trauma, because of the egregious misrepresentations made to me by leaders whom I loved and respected, and because of the improper instructions to lie about the affair and the fraudulent financial transactions that ensued. Eventually, my depression was so severe that I became suicidal, and was involuntarily committed to a mental institution. On November 18, 2010, my attorney delivered to Daystar lawyer John Lynch a letter stating that he was representing me, as well as 2 other former employees. A few weeks later, on November 30 at 11 a.m., Daystar broadcast a new episode of Celebration in which Marcus admitted that he had been unfaithful to his wife. Various guests, including the Kendalls, appeared on the program and praised Marcus for his transparency and the way he had conducted himself. But the descriptions of the affair and the ensuing events were completely misleading. The inappropriate relationship was incorrectly described as lasting only a short time, not 7 years. And Marcus falsely represented that he had stepped down from preaching for an extended period. It was also falsely represented that the other participant in the affair bore no responsibility for what had happened. But she had been a senior officer at Daystar, and was fully aware that donations to the organization had been used improperly, both to arrange the secret trysts and to cover up the affair.
Wow, so Jeanette's story is something else. It feels like the kind of thing you hear about and think, this can't possibly be real. But here we are. Jeanette, who worked closely with Marcus Lamb at Daystar, ended up filing a legal complaint, and the details are pretty eye-opening. Some employees at Daystar stumbled upon emails that exposed Marcus Lamb in a compromising situation. It wasn't just an accidental oops moment. This was deep enough to kick off a full-blown scandal. Now, you'd think a ministry would handle something like this with integrity, right? You know, own up, repent, and make amends. Instead, what followed was some next-level crisis management that felt more like a corporate cover-up than a ministry operating under God's light. It's like they were more worried about their public image and keeping the donor dollars flowing than addressing the root issue. And here's the kicker. Donor money, money people gave out of faith and sacrifice, was allegedly being used for personal expenses. Talk about a sense of entitlement. Doesn't this remind you of what Jesus said about hypocrisy in Matthew 23:27-28? He called out the Pharisees saying, "Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You are like whitewashed tombs, which look beautiful on the outside, but on the inside are full of the bones of the dead and everything unclean. In the same way, on the outside you appear to people as righteous, but on the inside you are full of hypocrisy and wickedness." It's a reminder that God cares more about what's in our hearts than the polished image we try to present. What's sad is that scandals like this can shake people's faith, not in God, but in the people who are supposed to represent Him. It's a sobering reminder of James 3:1, where it says, "Not many of you should become teachers, my fellow believers, because you know that we who teach will be judged more strictly." Leadership is a responsibility, not a privilege to exploit. At the end of the day, though, this is also a call to pray for healing and accountability. Galatians 6:1 says, "Brothers and sisters, if someone is caught in a sin, you who live by the Spirit should restore that person gently. But watch yourselves, or you also may be tempted." Accountability isn't about tearing people down. It's about bringing restoration where there's genuine repentance. What do you think? This whole story is a real test of faith, not just for the people involved, but for everyone watching. It's a reminder that the church isn't perfect, but God is. And He's always calling us to walk in integrity and humility.